Welcome to this Internet Governance Forum's Dynamic Coalitions webinar on quantum computing and post-quantum cryptography. My name is Wouter Naters van der Borgt, and I am the coordinator of the Dynamic Coalitions on Internet Standards Security and Safety, or IS3C, and I'm your moderator for the day. As you know, dynamic coalitions are voluntary entities under the umbrella of the United Nations and all have different topics that they pursue and advise on. You can find us on our website of the IGF, and perhaps Roman, you can share the link there that people can see how many there are. If I'm correct, there are 31 dynamic coalitions at this point, and several will participate in this webinar. This webinar is all about quantum computing, so you may think it's about the future, but you will find it's also about today and even about the past. This webinar, the topic will be highlighted from the view of several dynamic coalitions, but also from an outsider's perspective. Quantum computing is a topic that is discussed and has been presented on and discussed and even published on for some years now. Within the IGF itself, it has not been a major topic so far. But in June, in Lillestrøm in Norway, the Dynamic Coalition on Internet Standards, Security and Safety presented its latest report called Social, Political and Technical Impacts of IoT and Post-Quantum Cryptography Policies. In this report, examples of impact on IoT, on society, on the politics, on economics, and etc. were presented, but also several recommendations provided for the way forward.
This number is not valid.
Their microphone on, so perhaps please mute yourself. But quantum computing is often seen as a topic of the future. But the fact is, we may only be one eureka moment away from its breakthrough. What do scientists do? They take out something, put out another element, and all of a sudden it works. And sometimes they can't explain why, but it does. And that is the breakthrough everybody is looking for. At the same time, today, it's a security challenge that already exists. But it's also something that's already going on because hackers are already hacking into systems that they can't really access the data, but by downloading that data, they can wait for the quantum computer to decrypt that data at some point in the near or further future. So it's also an existing challenge. Today we have invited other dynamic coalitions and 3 guests to present their views on the challenge quantum poses to society in general and for their specific work field. Together they will show how quantum technologies could transform our societies, our economies and ICT systems, but also what actions are needed to prepare for Quantum Day, the day that the first quantum computer or a strong enough hybrid computer is active and working. They were asked to mention potential positive and negative outcomes for their work field. So we are very looking forward to what this will bring. I will introduce as a moderator each speaker separately before their intervention. At the close of the meeting, there's an opportunity to ask questions and to have a discussion. So without much further ado, I would like to present the speakers. You will find that the first one is also the last one where the content is concerned, because he was asked to give a presentation on what quantum computing is and what post-quantum cryptography, I can't pronounce the word, sorry, cryptography is all about. So João Moreno Falcao is an electro engineer and he's vice chair of IS3C's working group in emerging technologies, and he sets the scene in this presentation. What is quantum computing and what is PQC? So João, the floor is yours.
Okay, hello, Walt. Hi, everyone. So I believe one of the first thing we need to talk when discussing quantum physics and quantum computing is to understand that quantum phenomena are already something essential for a computer to work. So the way semiconductors work inside a computer can only be explained by quantum physics. So these kinds of properties that quantum physics provides to us are already being used to run a computer. But when we think, we can say like we have a quantum powered computer, but this is different than what the quantum computer is. So computers nowadays, that the ones that we all have in our homes, run in a very deterministic way. So this means that they, even though need relies on quantum physics, you execute protocols and algorithms that rely heavily on the deterministic of the computing field. And this is what the quantum computer breaks. So by using using the phenomena from the quantum world, we start to we are able to use several of the I'm sorry. So well, quantum physics have four different phenomena, very interesting to any kind of, not any kind, but several algorithms, which are superposition, entanglement, decoherence, and interference. And all of this provides us with a set of tools to execute in a non-deterministic way protocols. And this kind of thing creates a need to evolve our systems, especially in cryptography, for example. And this is where the post-quantum cryptography word comes. So cryptography is based on mathematical problems. So if a mathematical problem is hard for a computer to do, you can use it to protect information. So nowadays we use factorization and discrete logarithm to protect the information in authentication and integrity checks. And when we start using a quantum computer, a full-sized quantum computer, it can use some of this, for example, this superposition aspect of the quantum world to break into this this protection. And thinking about that, what researchers started to do is to think of different algorithms that doesn't rely on the factorization and the discrete logarithm problems, because they can be broken if we run using these kinds of features that a quantum computer works. And why this is dangerous for us? We will have all this the panelists to discuss this, but I want to bring, for example, one system, which are the electronic voting systems, and they rely mostly on technologies that are not quantum safe. And for example, you create a huge risk, because if you save a ballot, for example, in an encrypted format, and someone records it, you can break afterwards and destroy the security, which is one of the attacks that are called harvest now, decrypt later. And we can see all around the world issues like this happening. And yeah, I believe this is what I wanted to speak first, and I'll be back again to explain specific in the internet what we can attack with a quantum computer and what are the risks we are taking.
Thank you very much, Joel, for setting this scene, because it's very technical what you try to explain to us. So there may be some questions later, but we'll also see the chat. Some things are being explained by Nicolas Fiumarelli, so you may want to keep a track on that as well. So let's go into the setting the scene a little bit more. Benoit Ampot is Director of Partnerships and Innovation at AFNIC, the French Internet Registry. And he will mention the concerns for society in general and the internet standards in particular. So Benoit, the floor is yours. Why is AFNIC so concerned with the advent of quantum computing?
Thank you, Wout. Good day, everyone, and very pleased to be part of this webinar and to discuss quantum computing and why the adoption of post-quantum cryptography is crucial for AFNIC, the DNS infrastructure, and the broader internet community in general. So as a key stakeholder of the internet ecosystem, AFNIC regularly advocates for a coordinated multi-stakeholder approach to ensure a smooth and secure transition to these new cryptographic standards. This approach is evident in our ongoing efforts. So why this is important for us? We manage one of the core services of the internet, the DNS, which is the naming service for the internet. And while DNS is an historical service, it has been evolving to integrate security mechanisms such as DNSSEC. It is also today a key resource for helping email developability and authentication, such as SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. And additionally, we have been working on extending the naming protocol of the DNS to the Internet of Things for over 15 years, focusing on both technical aspects, but also identification of objects, security, and privacy issues. So while quantum computing promises revolutionary advancement, it also poses a substantial threat to our current cryptographic system, particularly for IoT devices integrated into our daily lives, and their underlying infrastructure. This is also very critical for the DNS, which is a glue and an essential infrastructure service intensively used by the majority of internet users and the IoT platform solutions. DNS is already a prime target for cyber attacks, and its disruptions can have significant consequences. As a registry, we need to ensure that the transitions to PQC is correctly implemented on our side. However, since by design every internet stakeholder is interconnected, we must also ensure that the transition applies across the entire DNS and internet stakeholders, such as registrars, registries, ICANN, internet exchange points, and other DNS service operators, such as ISPs and DNS solution provider. And the standardizations, I will talk also about standards and standardizations, and this work is very crucial also in defining global standards. We have a rather good vision and a more precise understanding since we are proactively following and taking part in, for instance, in the IETF organization, which is advancing protocols that integrate PQC and constrained environments. Additionally, at the national level, some countries are already implementing certification, for instance, and labeling systems to enhance security and IoT and in system and IoT. For instance, I can state the Asia and South Korea and Singapore and Germany, also in Europe and in France. Our National Security Agency is also advancing its initiative to prepare for the transition by preparing and developing guidelines, conducting assessment of industry readiness, which is key, and promoting hybrid cryptographic solutions to counter emerging quantum threats. These efforts highlight the need for global cooperation and standardized security measures, including the protection of the core internet infrastructure service, such as the DNS, which must be able to use PQC-compatible algorithm. The current state of cryptography is evolving towards post-quantum cryptography, necessitating a smooth transition that involves and replacing vulnerable asymmetric encryption methods, such as RSA, with PQC alternatives to safeguard against the future quantum computing threats. But Internet is not only technical, Internet have social and political implications. So the study you mentioned, Ruth, offer also a detailed analysis of existing vulnerabilities and provide strategic recommendation. It is essential to have coordinated policies, users awareness, and standardized security practices. The transition to PQC involves not just technical changes, but also social, legal, economic, and environmental consideration. Past experiences with technical transitions, such as the transition to IPv6, show that these changes can take over a decade and require rigorous planning and coordination. In conclusion, AFNIC is proactive addressing these challenges at its level. A multi-stakeholder approach to the transition to PQC is necessary. Collaboration among industry leaders, researchers, policymakers is crucial to ensure a secure and smooth transition. The current state of cryptography is evolving toward post-quantum cryptography, initially through hybrid implementations that combine classical and quantum-resistant algorithms for a smooth transition. Given the complexity of the internet and the connected services that will require the adoption of PQC, we need to prepare now for this long, hopefully, global and collective path to PQC. We must collectively anticipate an inevitable transition and start planning and coordinating efforts today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benoit. I think that you've set the scene in a very good way. That this is the Internet Governance Forum, and you explained completely how the Internet is dependent on the standards that it runs upon, and what the threats and the challenges are that we face. And I think perhaps the most important comment that you made is about how slow the current new generation standards are already being adopted, let alone that we face this existential crisis potentially. So that does make it very urgent to start early. And I think that we, at the Internet Governance Forum, it showed that we are ready, showing that we are ready to start this discussion in an early phase. So let's move on with that conclusion from my side. Thank you very much, Benoit. We're moving next to the DC team, and these are our youngest participants, I think, in this webinar, but at the IGF itself as well. When you think about quantum computing and people say it's 15, 20 years from now, the people who are now teens will be well beyond the start of their career. And if they understand what the challenges are, they will be very well equipped to make sure that things are functioning 20 years from now. But if we're faster, it's up to us. So Badana Kaur is an 18-year-old offensive security researcher specializing in Gen AI, API, and LLM security. She works with she calls herself Hack With Her, and she represents the DC Teen Coalition and will focus on the concerns for privacy. So Badana, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much for introducing me. I'm really glad to be here, and I'll just get started with it. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So when I was 14, I wanted to be a hacker. And back then, hacking to me, ethically, just meant finding vulnerabilities in systems and helping patch them. But at 18, now that I'm working in application security, I've realized that cybersecurity is about something deeper. The real challenge isn't just about protecting systems, but it's about protecting the fabric of trust that those systems are built on. Now, the main concern now, in essence, that Wout explained and Hao explained, is that quantum computers could one day compromise the cryptographic foundations like RSA and ECC that keep our data confidential and our digital lives intact. But how does that concern the common public like you and me? So quantum risk will cut across the core of how we live, our education systems, healthcare, the Internet of Things, and now the one thing that's on everybody's minds at the moment, artificial intelligence. So, if you take healthcare as an example, imagine there's a hospital that's using an AI model to detect early stage cancer. And yes, there's work being done on such models. Its integrity and reliability depends on cryptographic signatures proving that each update in that AI model is authentic. Now, if a quantum capable attacker can forge those signatures and tamper with the model, a single corrupted parameter could cascade into medical diagnostic gaps. And that's just one of the conceptual risks with quantum threats. Now, there's also the threat to data longevity, which I define as the long term privacy of data. The thing is, our data outlives us, and it also outlives the encryption standards that protect it. Now, certain data like genomic sequences, national health records, and diplomatic archives must remain confidential for decades. And once such encryption is broken, the loss of privacy in that particular vector is permanent. And in that sense, the real adversary is not always a hacker. Sometimes the adversary is time itself. Now, another aspect to data longevity concerns not just future lives, but the digital lives and privacy of young people like me that are creating data now. The Google CEO once said that young people are generating so much data now publicly that by adulthood, this generation will have to change their names. And that statement of his was just about reputation on the basis of the things that we post online. Imagine if that extended to our confidential data. So, this is what makes post quantum security not just a technical necessity of the future, but a moral and an intergenerational obligation of the present. And teens should be at the table. Now, speaking of data longevity and long term data security, you might feel like the quantum threat is distant, but the thing is, we don't need a quantum computer today to have a problem. As Woot really appropriately explained, advanced persistent threats are already harvesting encrypted data today and waiting to decrypt it once quantum power arrives. But enough negative talk. The good news is we have done this before. When the internet outgrew its security, we built TLS or transport layer security. When passwords failed, we built multi factor authentication. Quantum is just another shift. Bigger, yes, but not impossible. The National Institute of Standards and Technology has already formalized 3 post quantum cryptography algorithms, and some tech giants are already piloting hybrid deployments that combine classical and post quantum cryptography. And another positive aspect is that sometimes quantum itself can be our defense. So, researchers are also exploring the field of quantum native security, where cybersecurity comes from the principle of quantum physics themselves, like quantum key distribution. But on the other end of that spectrum, even quantum safe algorithms have shown real world vulnerabilities like timing or fault attacks. So, even before the first scalable quantum computer arrives, we are already facing attack vectors on post quantum cryptography that operate in quantum time. But this cat and mouse race of cybersecurity goes on, and if history has taught us anything, it's that cybersecurity is and has always been profoundly human. Theory rarely fails, ideas rarely fail, implementation does. And we cannot defend what we do not yet understand. And that's why I believe awareness of post quantum risks among stakeholders and the public alike is as crucial as any technicality or algorithm. Members of our team at the Dynamic Teen Coalition have been advocating for teen representation in quantum computing for years, and we've also been engaging with organizations like CERN. So, quantum is coming, and the readiness for it is still in our hands. And I believe that if we play our cards right, the quantum era will not be the death of cybersecurity, it will just be adolescence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vandana. And I think you gave an excellent presentation, and also that the youth has the future. That's a thing that's for certain here. And I think that is something we need to take into consideration. So thank you very much. I think you showed both sides excellently. Another field that could be in danger of breaking off security is journalism. And in the next presentation, I have Nampilo Slimanian, who is a lawyer by profession, and her work revolves around the intersection of law, technology, and human rights. She works as the Africa Advocacy and Engagement Lead at the International Press Institute, API, and represents the Dynamic Coalition on the Sustainability of Journalism and News Media, or DC Journalism. I think that if security is broken, journalism will have a major issue with protecting sources and the information they're working on. So Nompilo, please take us on your view what the quantum could mean for journalism in a positive and a negative way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and to all the speakers that have also unpacked this issue earlier. Unfortunately, I'm not a technical person, so brace up for more of a layman conversation. But yeah, I'm really excited to join this conversation, and a big thank you also to the Internet Standards Security and Safety Coalition and the broader IGF community for hosting this important conversation. This dialogue could not be more timely because I appreciate that it recognizes also the deep and growing interconnectedness between emerging technologies and the broader ecosystem of journalism and information integrity and digital rights as well. And I find this conversation to be particularly important also because it helps us to understand both the opportunities and the serious risks that quantum technologies may pose to journalists and media freedom. As someone who operates particularly in countries in the global south, you'd find that across the different regions, journalists are already working in increasingly fragile and hostile contexts. Media freedom is being undermined by the misuse of national security laws, disinformation laws. We have seen autocratic regimes weaponizing technology, including spyware, to surveil and silence independent and critical voices. In these circumstances, you'd find that the right to privacy and the security of journalistic communications are not optional. These are the foundations of free and independent public interest journalism. And we note that technology is continuing to evolve, and we cannot stop the evolution of technology. And I appreciated what Bandana said about how we have been able to upskill as technology has been evolving. And I think it is important also that as innovations such as quantum computing do come, we make sure that they do not come at the expense of press freedom or digital security. It is important that as we think about this issue, and especially the next generation of other technologies, we think about strengthening encryption and protecting privacy rather than opening new avenues for unlawful or mass surveillance. And this is particularly important, especially when you think about source protection, which lies at the heart of ethical and credible journalism. Journalists rely on encryption to communicate safely with whistleblowers, to protect the anonymity of their sources, especially in repressive environments. One of the things I've always been asking so many colleagues now as part of my work is that how do you coordinate advocacy work when you're operating in repressive environments, especially, for example, in countries that are in conflict or countries that are under military regimes, for example, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, or Niger. So the importance of protecting communication and anonymity of sources is something that we should not undermine. And of course, the security also of unpublished materials and also investigative notes. So when we think about, quantum computing, I think for me, one of the key things I've been thinking about is that it has the potential to break most of today's encryption systems, which are the very systems that journalists are relying on. So if encryption becomes obsolete, it also means, other malicious sources, including autocratic governments, will be able to access, privatized information, investigative information, and expose sources, and also in the process implicate journalists and human rights defenders. So when I think about this issue, this is not just a technological issue. This is not just a technical issue. This is also a human rights issue. Online safety and security is the bedrock of meaningful digital participation. And I liked what Bandana said, that cybersecurity is about protecting systems. And I'd also add to that, that it's also about protecting people that are utilizing some of these systems. For journalists, media freedom and the successful undertaking of their role, especially with access and dissemination of information, they depend on trust, on confidentiality of these systems, and on secure communication. So I think it is important that, as we think about this conversation, as media freedom, as internet governance communities, as digital rights communities, we not only understand the risks that quantum technologies pose, but also we advocate for systems that are resilient. And we also ensure that journalists and media organizations are supported to make the transition or to prepare for the transition safely and equitably. When I was thinking about this, I think the key thing for me was that it's important to ensure that governments play their part, especially by promoting rights-based technology policies, especially protecting encryption, prohibiting backdoors, and investing in secure digital infrastructure. But also that we need to build the capacity of the media sector. Journalists need the knowledge, journalists need the training, and journalists need the tools to navigate the next wave of technological change and to ensure that they do so safely, confidently, and independently. I think these would be my initial remarks for now, but also happy to continue the conversation in the chat and in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nimpolo. And I think that you showed exactly where the issue could lie for whole society when this breaks down. So I would think that this is a tremendously important topic to have on our mind and to actually start working on, so that also your community will be safe and secure in this future. And another part that is perhaps under threat is the blockchain. But so that is partly financial, partly the notary and other official things that are being put down in the blockchain. If that is broken, there will be major challenges, but there may also be very good cause for optimism. So we have Dino Cataldo Della Casio. He's the Deputy Chief Executive of the United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund and represents the Dynamic Coalition on Blockchain Assurance and Standardization, DCBAS. And he will focus on the impact of quantum in this line of work. So Dino, the floor is yours, and I understand you would like to share your screen. Please do so.
Thank you very much, Wout, and very pleased to be here with the IGF colleagues and with the audience. Indeed, I have a few slides to simply help me make my point vis-a-vis a specific case. So what I'm bringing to this conversation today is a very practical and real experience vis-a-vis the solution, the digital identity solution that we have implemented at United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund. In 2021, we went live, we went in production with a blockchain-based digital identity solution that also uses biometrics, facial recognition, and artificial intelligence. So using a blockchain platform, of course, as has been alluded to, exposes us also to the post-quantum computing threats. And what I'm sharing here today with all of you is indeed the due diligence process that we followed in order to identify the threats and also in order to identify the associated mitigating measure. So, as already been mentioned, there are a lot of, if you will, opportunities and threats. I will focus a little bit more on the threats vis-a-vis my practical experience. So very briefly, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, in my specific case at the UN Pension Fund, we use a specific open source platform for blockchain called Hyperledger in the areas. And vis-a-vis the generic threat landscape, we, of course, we identified, as already explained by my distinguished colleagues, the issue of the quantum computing power, the issue related with the timeline concern is when and if quantum computing will be, or it is, a specific threat. The primary vulnerability, and specifically looking at blockchain that are relying on public and private key encryption, the vulnerability of the current asymmetric encryption that are based on the RSA and the ECC cryptography. And again, as already alluded to, the here and now risk of the harvest now, decrypt later, meaning hackers that collect transaction today and store it in order to wait for when the post-quantum computing will enable them to decrypt the data, the sensitive data that potentially are stored in this transaction. So Wout alluded to the fact that we should not only look at the threats, but also the vulnerabilities. And so here in red color, I try to just capture some of the key and most relevant opportunities that quantum computing offer. For example, in the computational processing domain, of course, post-quantum computing will offer exponentially faster processing as compared to classical computer, ability to explore multiple solutions simultaneously, solve complex optimization problem, having more machine learning model that can learn from smaller data set and identify more correlation. And also in the security domain, vis-a-vis the fact that quantum computing will provide the true randomness, a full entropy vis-a-vis, for example, the cryptographic application. And through the quantum key distribution, also theoretically unbreakable encryption. But moving on, again, from the point of view of someone who needs to ensure and needs to provide due diligence vis-a-vis blockchain, here is the issue. In a digital identity solution, there are different components, specifically the decentralized identifiers, and of course, the pairs of public and private keys. So in a blockchain such as the one that we have implemented, the UN Pension Fund, the exposure pertains to the digital signature that can be compromised by quantum attacks, but the security of the decentralized identifier, by the vulnerability of the zero knowledge proof that it's another mechanism that a feature of the blockchain that support digital identity, the validity of the long-term credential, and of course, the overall integrity of the transaction themselves, and therefore the so-called and expected immutability of the ledger that is stored on the blockchain. So vis-a-vis the threat timeline, again, it's already been alluded to, although there are certain scenarios that depending on who you listen to, there are from 2030 or post-2035, whatever that may be the case, but the here now threat is the harvest now, decrypt later. So what to do vis-a-vis this threat? Well, there is the need for a specific analysis of each use case. And again, going back to my specific use case, we have been looking vis-a-vis the platform that we use, the Hyperledger, at the decentralized identifier, the methods and the associated updates, at the schemes that are utilized for the credential signature, at the secure messaging, at the consensus mechanism that are used and adopted on the blockchain itself, and the added connection between the agent that operate. So from a systemic point of view, from a non-technical, if you will, point of view, at the process level, what we have identified by referencing ISO standard and best practices also issued by NIST, the need to identify data retention and really understand what is vulnerable and when, in order to focus and in order to invest protection on what really needs to be protected. In order to do this, also important to have an inventory of the cryptographic keys and the primitives that are used in a specific solution environment, identify the critical system, identify the technical debt, identify the legacy system that may or may not be able to be upgraded with the newest approved and tested post-quantum resistant encryption mechanism, and also look at the exposure with third party. So vis-a-vis, for example, the NIST, there are already specific cryptographics that are post-quantum resistant, based, lattice-based, hash-based. The also recommendation to identify the possibility of upgrading the hash function or the possibility of using hybrid approach. I'm a former auditor, so I always look at how to determine whether what we are doing is correct and is aligned. Where there are certain parameters, certain indicators. For example, the percentage of decentralized identifier that have been upgraded. For example, the testing of the zero knowledge proof level, the frequency of the key rotation, and whether it's been adopted, the quantum key distribution penetration in the node-to-node communication. So as I alluded to, there are Yes.
I can
I
give
was
you
just
1 more
finishing
minute.
with the last slide.
Okay.
Yes, the last slide is this. I just wanted to share the reference standard from ISO standard to NIST publication and other research literature. Thank you, and back to you.
That was a very short minute. Thank you very much, Dino. I think you showed us a few very interesting things. When we hear about blockchain, usually we think about Bitcoins and the rates going up and down and speculation, etc. But what you showed is that it's used for far more things. And it reminds me of a presentation I heard well before COVID of a major lawyer firm here in the Netherlands promoting the blockchain to use for contracts for whatever they do as a law firm. And that they were promoting it, not the government or something else. So they will probably be using it 8 years later, whatever. The other thing you mentioned are legacy systems. And I think that may well be the biggest threat, even if we manage to do the transition in time. All these things that cannot transition, what will happen to them and what threat do they provide to society, etc. And that's something we need to take into consideration. So thank you for mentioning that. Let's go on to the next presentation. As somebody from outside said, we have few people who were not members of a dynamic coalition. The next is Maiki Madlena Sippinen. She is an expert at the intersection of emerging technologies and public policy. But as the UN consultant, she leads the work in the IGF Policy Network on Artificial Intelligence. And she will focus on how advances in AI and quantum technology will reinforce one another. So Maiki, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Wout. It's really exciting to be here with all of you today. So I'm indeed Maiki Sippinen and here representing or from the IGF Policy Network on AI or PNAI. And in the PNAI community, we have lately been discussing that we should really advocate what we call a socio-techno-ecological approach to governance of AI. And this is quite simple but powerful. So we should see AI as not an isolated technology, but instead as part of this broader digital ecosystem and something that's like interconnected with other emerging technologies or infrastructures or social systems. And of course, one of the most exciting connection is between AI and quantum computing. So I'm here really to make the point that AI and quantum are intertwined. And from that follow two to-dos or two actions that we should focus on next. One would be that we should apply these lessons learned from AI governance to quantum. And secondly, that we should start now developing cross-technology policy approaches so that we can get the maximum benefit from AI and quantum both. Good. So let's first go into this, that AI and quantum computing are increasingly intertwined. So we know that AI and quantum can reinforce each other's capabilities. And earlier this month, I saw the OECD report called AI and quantum computing a mutually reinforcing power couple, which is, I think, a great way to describe this potential that they hold together. So we want to ask, how can AI help quantum technology improve? And of course, also how quantum computing could help AI become better than what it is right now. So AI can help advance quantum computing. And for example, we can use machine learning to optimize the way quantum computers correct errors, which we already heard and most of us know is a big challenge in building a functional use for a quantum computer. And I have understood that these best decoder softwares of today actually all use AI, and AI models and AI tools are actually used on all stages of building quantum computers, starting from the chips. And also quantum computing is expected to transform or supercharge AI at some point. So quantum computers could then help AI systems in processing these supermassive data sets and even doing that faster and more efficiently before. And this would help us cut the time and resources that are needed to train more modern, advanced AI models and systems. And in the end, we could have AI systems and AI tools that are just better and more accurate and precise in their descriptions as before. So there are actually quite high expectations of what we can achieve if we combine AI and quantum. So we can think that if AI makes machines intelligence and allows them to learn and recognize patterns and make decisions, and quantum computing can solve these complex problems that we haven't been able to solve before and do that faster and better than other computers. If we can combine these two qualities or type of technologies, that would be then the promise of quantum AI. And Wout asked to cover some opportunities and risks. So, of course, with any powerful new combination of technologies, we will see both positive and negative developments and impact. And on the positive side, AI and quantum could lead into new groundbreaking innovations and really solutions to problems that we can't even imagine right now. On cybersecurity side, we know that quantum machine learning could help us detect cyber threats because it would be so much better at noticing all kinds of patterns in these threat behaviors as we are right now. So we would have far more sophisticated threat detection systems and much better digital safety overall. And something that excites me the most maybe is the materials science and what AI and quantum combined could do there. I have to admit I'm not really an expert in materials science, but I understand that we might even have some batteries that you might need to charge hardly ever, or truly sustainable plastics if we combine AI's ability to find and develop these new compounds. And then from quantum computing, we would get this ability to really simulate these complex properties in different ways. So that would lead humanity into new kinds of materials that might solve some of the most pressing problems.
Mikey, I
environmental side.
have to ask you to conclude, please.
Good. So these are just a couple of examples, and what I really want to highlight is that quantum is coming. We don't know exactly when, but now is really time for stock taking on what we can learn from AI policy and governance and how we apply those lessons to quantum. For example, in understanding new types of risks or regulating multi-use technologies, channeling public hype or fears, and also building on the AI ethics principles. So this would make quantum policy more impactful, but also way more efficient. And to do that, we also need to start developing cross-technology policy approaches. So no need to start every policy effort for new technologies from scratch, but we should really build this learning system of governance that evolves and improves over time. So in short, to get the maximum benefit of quantum and AI, we should just have new types of governing and new types of cooperation working together, and perhaps IGF communities could be the trailblazers and lead us in new cooperation and new types of governance between AI and quantum computing. Thank you.
That is a very nice conclusion, which I can't say anything better. So I'll leave it there. But thank you very much for pointing out this cross section, because I think that is extremely important to realize that there's more happening than just the advent of quantum. The next speaker is Rajendra Pratap Gupta, and he is a public policy expert who has been contributing to policy making for over 2 decades across sectors. He represents the Dynamic Coalition on Digital Economy, and the floor is yours, Rajendra, to explain how this quantum will impact the work that you were doing in this DC.
you out and wonderful conversations, eye-opening for most. But one thing I want to clarify that quantum computer is not the future; it's already come. The theoretical aspect of quantum computing came way back in 2019. And to simply put it, like conventional computing is about binary, 0 or 1. Quantum is about multiple states. It's what we call qubits. So you can understand from that the impact quantum will have on every sector, every domain. In fact, uh, I think it's like a quantum leap. And when I wrote in 2020 in my book, this is the exact quote I wrote about quantum and other technologies, that quantum computing will take various domains beyond what the human eye can see, what human brain can analyze, and what human hand can do. I mean, that sums up what quantum can deliver if you look at the impact in various fields. And it is very clear that the physical computing has already reached the limits of computing. I mean, Moore's law is gone. I think it's pretty over. So the new things are coming in. And we live in the age of data, and the kind of data that we are generating, I think ordinary conventional systems can't compute them. So you need quantum computing that can analyze billions of computations simultaneously. And I see various discoveries coming in through quantum. I don't see just quantum as a technology, but across fields, given the work that we are doing, I think it'll accelerate AI with quantum. And I've actually in the functional AI pyramid linked quantum computing at level 3 of AI deployment, which is the innovator level of AI. And I think the range of impact could be right from precision agriculture to smart cities, space exploration, climate change. I think name a sector, it will touch and transform. I don't think that it's something that will be limited to few areas. It will be touching every sector. When I look at the digital economy, dynamic coalition, and the work we do, I think there are three words that define, the digital economy: the trust, the speed, and scale. And quantum is going to touch all of them. But there's a challenge. Every technology comes with two sides. There is no technology that only has the ups and no downside. All is upside and downside. So the biggest thing is democratization of knowledge, which I think wonderfully by putting this webinar on the IGF, you have done by creating awareness at a different level. But knowledge is one thing and capacity building is another. If we do not do capacity building, knowledge remains the focus, and I would say the area of elite, which is the big tech. And IGF is a platform where I've been saying, and this is our role, that we don't have to look at small number of large companies leveraging such technologies. It should be large number of small companies or entities. So I think democratization of quantum is also one of the things that we should be doing. And it's more about a human capacity revolution. I will end this with the quote from the president of IBM when we predict future technologies and their scope. So Thomas Watson famously said that there is a world market for perhaps 4 or 5 computers. I think in my home, I have more than that. So I'll predict the future of quantum like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rajendra. And I think that you've added another component to this discussion, and I commend you all for it, because everybody manages to put in something extra. I think what you focus on is that this is not just something 4 or 5 major companies have to do. We all have to do this at some point in time. And I think, yes, just like with the regular computer, there will be an invention to make it smaller and smaller so that we will have one at home at some point. If I'm still around, I don't know, but we will have one at home probably. And I think that that is what we should be doing: training, changing, training again, and changing more. And then we'll have everybody on board who needs to be on board at some point in time. We're going to yet another different aspect of this discussion. Amalie de Silva Mitchell is an economist and accountant with a background in computer science, but today she represents the Dynamic Coalition on Data-Driven Health Technologies, and she will explain how quantum will affect the health system and everything to do with health itself, because it could very well be positive as well. So Amalie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ruud. So I don't have too much to say, but I want to highlight a few points. The speakers before me have been eloquent and thorough, and I support everything that they have said. But what our Dynamic Coalition takes the perspective of healthcare from very much the public user. And we have been very much into the internet prior to COVID, where we encourage people to use the internet to connect with specialists, with their general practitioners, with the pharmacy, with the hospital, and so forth. And what we're going to see into the future with the increase of use of artificial intelligence and quantum technologies is that we're going to bring healthcare into the home. So as a result, the home must be a safe space. And our speakers have eloquently talked about the fact of security. And we're very concerned about the individual. How will they be impacted by quantum? How will their privacy be protected? How will their security be protected? You know, the misinformation that they Google when they want to understand a medical condition, how will that be affected? You know, the misinformation, the misrepresentation, you know, that all is very worrying if there can be actors who will, let's call it, damage the information authenticity. Okay, so what is then assurance that the public can have when they Google, you know, a medical condition? Or, you know, what if they share their files and those files are then damaged and then their specialist comes to a wrong conclusion, as was mentioned before. So we're very concerned about these issues for the very ordinary person. So what we're talking here again is of a digital divide. So it's not, earlier we had the access divide, then we had artificial intelligence divide. You know, what's going to happen now with quantum technology? Only 17 countries are into, you know, preparing the infrastructure for quantum technology. We have 150 plus countries in the UN system that are not. So there's going to be this huge divide between countries. There's going to be huge divide between regions. You know, South America is not necessary at the moment developing quantum technologies. We're going to have issues with culture, right? And cultural beliefs. And then we are collecting this data as we have with AI. We're assuming a certain kind of socioeconomic structure when this might not be relevant to other smaller countries or even regional groups. So we have to be very conscious of what is happening, how we're approaching quantum, just as how we're approaching artificial intelligence. So I think the main word that I want to share here is, let's talk about ethics. Just as we started talking about ethics 7 years ago, I also brought this up with the International Telecommunications Union, that we really need to get some fundamental understandings of how we're going to approach quantum if it's going to be different from artificial intelligence, as mentioned previously. So that's really what I want to share, and just make just one other pitch. I think quantum can really support us speedily developing new medical products. So I want to say, please, let's think from, you know, right from the beginning. Let's design ethics so that we also include countries, for instance, who want to develop a medical procedure or develop a medical product, especially, you know, medication. Let's help them also have some time with those countries that have the infrastructure in place for quantum, so that these, you know, these products can also be developed, because, you know, some of the population of the world are very large, where they are not part of the English language based IT systems. So let's think bottom up, let's think ethics by design, and let's be inclusive of the diversity that we have on the planet. Thank you so much, Arut.
Thank you very much, Amali. And I think you've shown exactly where the challenges are, that the word ethics has been touched upon, perhaps but not really mentioned yet, but it was a part of some of the presentations, that we do have to look into implications of quantum, but also the opportunities that quantum may present to health care and to medicine and pharmacy, etc. So thank you very much for that. The final, not the penultimate speaker, as you said, but the final person we've invited from the outside of the Dynamic Coalitions is Clarice de Aiello, and she works at the Quantum Biology Institute. And she is somebody who's working on the research of quantum and biology. So she will focus on how nature might be optimized to harness quantum mechanics and will share a little bit about the current state of quantum research. So Clarice, thank you for getting up this early, but also to be that you're present here, and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me here. I think I'm going to start on a happy note. As João mentioned before, quantum is not in the future. We are already living in a quantum world, right? Your classical computer, your desktop only works because of the laws of quantum. Your phone, GPS, magnetic resonance scanners in hospitals only work because of the laws of quantum. So quantum is not magical. If you hear otherwise, it's the fault of us. It's the fault of the physicists who want to keep it mystical. There's nothing mystical about quantum. Quantum is accessible to anyone. And in fact, I think quantum should be a human right, that anyone with a high school education should learn a little bit about quantum because it helps you learn about the world that you already inhabit. And in the same way that when I was growing up, the only people who learned how to code were people who went into engineering and physics universities. Right now, there's like first year school children learning how to code. And I hope that the same will happen with quantum, that people very early will learn a little bit about quantum. There's plenty of free quantum classes online, and I encourage you to take this step so that you can understand better the world that you already, again, live in. I am trained as an experimental quantum physicist, and I worked in a field called quantum sensing, which is adjacent to the field of quantum computing. So I know a little bit about the field of quantum computing as well. And one thing that I would like to tell you is that you are all right. Quantum is coming. I think we should prepare quantum computing, quantum breaking of encryption. All of this is coming. I think we should prepare starting now. And I would also like to say that there's a lot of hype. I do believe that a lot of the discussion is actually engineered by the companies that have a lot to gain when their technology comes to fruition, and they hype things so that their own funds keep on flowing. So yes, quantum is coming. I think quantum is not coming anytime soon. This does not mean that we shouldn't prepare, but the quantity of qubits available for people to play with is not enough to do any harm right now. Okay, so we should prepare, and the technology is really not ready to do harm yet. Okay, it will, but not at any one point. And every time you hear claims, think who might be making the claim and who those claims might benefit. And many times it's the companies that are developing the technology. This said, I want to tell you a little bit about what I do, which is using quantum in a slightly different way. There are many other ways that quantum can have applications. It's not only quantum computing. For example, we research the extent to which, at the Quantum Biology Institute here in LA, we research the extent to which all of life have endogenous, imbued into them, quantum knobs that can be accessed to actually to do stuff. Okay, so there is incomplete but very compelling evidence that nature, I actually believe that nature is the best quantum engineer around. Humankind got to quantum physics 200 years after the Industrial Revolution. Imagine nature that has had gazillions of years. So I do think that we can learn with nature both how to build better quantum technologies and also use the quantum knobs that it seems nature input into all of our cells, because I think, for example, that there's a way to use those endogenous quantum degrees of freedoms that exist in cells for things, for example, like therapeutics. Okay, so there are many sides to quantum, and we need to protect from this potentially nefarious side of quantum. Yes, we should start now. It's not going to come anytime soon, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. And also, I think that it's going to happen faster, for example, to learn a little bit with nature how to control those quantum knobs in biology. And this is what we do at the Quantum Biology Institute. And I think that completes my short message of today.
Thank you very much, Clarice, and for showing us that perhaps it is a hype that is going on, but also that it will be coming. But I also learned that I have a quantum knob or some of them in my own body, and I really did not know that. So do I get worried, or should I be happy? Perhaps we should discuss that later.
I hope you should be happy. I think there are other can of worms having to do with ways to turn those knobs in nefarious ways, but that's a discussion for some other webinar.
Right. Thank you very much for pointing this out. We come to the final speaker. That was also the first speaker, João Moreno Falcao of the DC IS3C. He's going to close the presentations and present on IS3C's report on quantum and some of the recommendations and necessary next steps. So, João, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Walt. I believe all the presentations here were great and brought some new aspects of our discussion. And well, what we are seeing in the world is that the quantum computers that are publicized have unreliable qubits. So when we are like in one breakthrough away of having reliable qubits would change everything. But with the technology we have now, we see the potential of these kinds of attacks. And well, in this intervention, I want to share the key findings of our research at IS3C conducted together with FNIC. So on the social and policy dimensions of the transition to post-quantum cryptography, or PQC, the internet depends on authentication and integrity to function. Every secure transaction from DNS to online banking to connected devices relies on cryptographic systems that could one day be broken by a quantum computer. And this means the impact of PQC will reach far beyond the tech industry. It affects citizens, governments, and the global digital governance. So we look closely at what's being done in the US and the EU, analyzing how policies, standards, and national strategies are evolving. And we found mainly 3 takeaways. The first one, no single actor can make this transition alone. So governments, operators, and private companies must collaborate to ensure interoperability and avoid fragmented internet. The PQC migration will only succeed if it's a global coordinated effort, technically harmonized. And second, the risk of the quantum divide. Some countries are already investing in quantum-safe systems, while others still lack resources or awareness. And without international cooperation, this could deepen inequalities in cybersecurity, creating a world that some networks are quantum secure, while others remain exposed. And the third, the social and political and environmental dimensions. The transition to PQC will require new hardware, updated software, and extensive training, all of which come at a cost. So larger keys and heavier computations will increase energy consumption and potentially electronic waste. If legacy systems can't be upgraded, That's why we emphasize that PQC must be deployed in a sustainable and inclusive way. And discussing about this, we created a two-phase approach. So preparing and managing the transition. So during the preparation, we need to build a cryptographic inventory to know where vulnerable algorithms are used. We need to ensure regulatory and policy support for quantum readiness. We need to promote global coordination through multi-stakeholder forums such as the IGF. And during the transition, we need to deploy hybrid systems that combine classical and post-quantum algorithms during the migration. We need to plan a phased migration starting from critical infrastructure, and we need to guarantee interoperability between countries and systems. So with all of this, what we see is that we need to collaborate. We need people to discuss, to join forces, and find the weak spots that we want to protect first, and then to create this plan to migrate. I want to remember that the EU is planning to do this migration in 5 years. The US is planning on 10 years. So we have a very tight schedule for such an enormous task. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, João. And I think that you've showed us all the tremendous task that is ahead of this world if we want to transition to a PQC world, a post-quantum cryptography world, because we're not talking about quantum day, it's about protecting ourselves before quantum day happens, because on quantum day we're too late. It has to happen before that, and we don't know what the end date is. So that poses tremendous the challenges, but you can see with some research done, you can come up with some great recommendations that the whole world can work with. And in my closing remarks, I will come back to potential future. Let me open up the floor first for questions. Will try and see if I can get most participants on my screen, but please raise your hand if you have a question for one of the speakers. Then introduce yourself first and then identify who would like to answer your question. So please raise your hands. I see Patrick Bell first. So Patrick, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and please introduce yourself.
Good morning from the East Coast, and my name is Patrick Bell, and I'm an independent researcher. I'm also work in the security space and also interested in the impacts between AI and quantum. I'm a member of the PNAI, and the question I have for all the participants is fundamentally about risk, and how risk is something that I think is an issue that cuts across all the presentations we had today, and that developing a, shall we say, collaborative effort to not only assess risk, but also communicate that risk. I, in particular, agree with Clarice that we need to have really important discussions about what is hype and what will actually help, because we have a short amount of resources. I also worked in the U.S. federal government, and as you know, we're shut down right now. So because of that, we need to have collaborative efforts like this. So what I would like, the general question is, how do we address this concept of risk? But in particular, how do we differentiate what's hype and what will actually help in our discussions?
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. As Clarice, as you mentioned, I will give the floor to you first, and then I'll allow one other to respond.
I agree with everyone else that this will come. I don't know if I don't think it's going to come in 5 years. I think it's going to come, be it in 50 years, 100 years, or even earlier. It is going to come. So I think it's good that there are people like you all thinking about this. My remark about hype is to just be mindful of whom the hype benefits. Okay, and that I think we should prepare. And I also think that we should take everything that people with a commercial interest in mind, what they say about when that's coming. That was all that I wanted to say. This said, it is coming. We should prepare.
I think, Lisa, that does make me think that the people who may be the most silent may be the biggest threat. How would you look at it from that angle? And then I'll give the floor to you, Rajendra.
Thank you. I think one thing we should be very clear about that the risk should not stop us from using the technology. That being said, I think let me give you an example of this. So as I see the innovator level of AI, as I call it, will lead to creation of a lot of drugs like we did in the time of COVID. We came out with a drug in 11 months. We repurposed drugs using data and AI. In the age of data and AI, we are going to use quantum at level 3. There's no question about it. Now, just look at this example of hype and also I would say heal and also the threat that we have. So you could come out with drugs very quickly, leveraging the analysis of data. And I'm sure Claris is doing wonderful work in the domain and like others. But what could happen if it just goes to the exclusive domain of big pharma? They would keep coming out with drugs, selling them without clinical trials. Now that's the threat. So what we do is a fair balance. I think the point raised at various things is like collaboration is the key. So the academia, industry, and research collaboration is the key goal to making sure that we have guardrails not to misuse quantum, but to leverage the full potential. So that's where I'll stop now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajendra. Is there anybody else with a question? I don't see any hands at this moment. Then I will put somebody on the spot, but you can decline the honor if you want to. But I see that Stefan Fischer is on the call, and you are active in the ISP Association in Germany, called ECO. Are there any discussions on the security and post-quantum cryptography from the side of ISPs? Would you be able to say something about it, Stefan? But if not, please. You don't have to, but we're just curious. Are you there, Stefan? No, I don't think so. So then we'll continue. I don't see any hands up, but I do have a question for Dino. Dino, the rumor is that the blockchain has already been broken quite recently. Is there any truth in that? Is Dino with us? Yes, he should be. Dino? I do have the impression you can hear me, right? That is not that I'm muted. But then Dino is not able to respond at this moment. Is there another question? Clarice, yes?
I would wager all my Bitcoins, of which I have exactly 0, that this is a rumor. I do not think that quantum computers are powerful enough to do this. I hope Dino can answer this. I'm very curious. I wager all my 0 Bitcoins that this is a
Well, we have somebody technical. Joao, could you say something about it?
Okay, so when we analyze the Bitcoin protocol, if we think of just the blockchain, we know it's quantum safe because it's a hash-based system, and hashes aren't on the target. But if we look at the other aspects like the key signing that are widely used, we can see that they can beat a target, but I highly doubted that they managed to attack this, because this would mean that almost every system on Earth is already being attackable.
Thank you. Going through some of the comments that I see that Avri responded to Clarice, saying that I like it that to the extent that quantum is real, then it is here now and has been since forever. But though I get confused, he said, when I read that some quantum effects can change what had been the case in the past. So is that something you can respond to, Clarice?
Can change some events in the past.
Or Avri, would you like to explain first what it is you mean? Avri, are you there? Apparently not. So I can't make it any clearer for you, Clarice.
So another thing, it's adjacent to quantum, but to the best of the mainstream physics knowledge, time, I don't know if that's the question, but time travel is really not allowed by the laws of physics. I don't know if that's what the question is addressing.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting perspective. I was thinking more about that data from the past could be about the Decrypt Now thing, that it was on that, but I'm not sure. And as Avri is not responding, we can't make it any clearer. So let's leave it there. I don't see any questions. We may run 2-3 minutes over time, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. But I'm going to ask all the speakers to make a closing comment of 30 seconds. And please keep it there, then we'll somehow remain in time. So I'll just go down my list. Joao, you go first. What are your closing comments?
Okay, so when we implemented all this security protocols in the systems, we wanted them to keep secure in the long term. So with a regular computer, you would have the time of the universe to break a system, and it would be very important to keep it that way.
Thank you very much. Benoit, your closing comment, please.
Yes. So from an operational perspective, we should remind that internet is used by the 2/3 of the humanity, and the last third, unfortunately, is not connected to internet. So we should not miss the fact that it could have significant effects to every internet users, since even though theoretically we have technical solution, it could take time to be implemented. So we should be very careful about the on-the-field technology and the transition to assure that PQC cryptography could apply to the maximum of users as soon as the threat is not anymore is a real threat.
Thank you very much. And Bandana, your closing remark?
Yeah, so I believe quantum computing is coming, whether in the next 50 or 100 years, but our responsibility is clear from the now. We have to protect integrity, longevity, and the trust behind digital systems today, not just for the generations of tomorrow, but also for young people like me.
Thank you. Nompilo?
Thank you very much, everyone. I think for me, it was quite enlightening just hearing the potential benefits of quantum computing for the health sector. So I think in closing, I'd want to say, going forward, let us think about how we can promote innovation while also ensuring that we safeguard rights. Yeah.
Thank you. Dino, let's see if he's there again. I don't think so. So we'll have to do without Dino's famous last words. Mikey.
Thanks from me, that we need to apply these lessons learned from AI governance to quantum, and also develop these cross-technology approaches and hopefully IGF communities. So our communities could be trailblazers in that.
Thank you very much. And we will try to be trailblazers. Rajendra, your final comment.
The technology is not for technologists, it's for everyone. I think we all must take the leap without trying to learn or doing technology-led courses. Just start playing with them. Our dynamic coalitions work with them, try and browse them, enjoy them, contribute to them, and participate. That's the best thing I would say as my last words. Thank you.
Thank you. Amali?
Yes, I'd like to say please put ethics at the focus of conversations, and let's prepare from now to have ethics, ensure cultural diversity, inclusivity in innovation. That means small countries can also participate using these technologies for development of innovations. Safety for all, and really be aware there's a quantum divide, and really think at all the risks and all the partnerships and all the variables that we must look at to eliminate a quantum divide. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Clarice.
I think Dino is back too. Maybe he goes.
Oh,
after.
Yeah, no,
Okay, Dino.
apologies. I got a call just when you called my name. For me, this is an excellent demonstration of the multi-stakeholderism with the contribution of all the representative by the Dynamic Coalition. I think we have complemented each other and we have enriched this conversation. So I think this is really the expression of the value of the IGF and the Dynamic Coalition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dino. Now to you, Clarice.
And for me, for everyone here, all the participants, quantum already permeates your life. It's not magical. It's not the purview of some selected few. Do not get misled by people who might make you think that quantum is not approachable. It is. Go learn quantum. Many online free courses of quantum, because again, it helps you understand better the world that you already live in. Quantum literacy should be a human right.
Thank you very much, Clarice, and that's a very nice ending. Before I say my final comments, I'm asking Roman Zhukov of the IGF Secretariat to come in with comments on future webinars or future actions of the IGF. So Roman, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, dear Wout. Thanks to you, we had this brilliant webinar, and I join others in thanking you and Rajendra and all the distinguished panelists and participants for the interest to this topic, for another time of demonstration, the expert capacity of dynamic coalitions, which we see as the driver of the IGF's new innovative ideas and approaches. And I believe that we should synthesize the outcomes, the substantive outcomes of today's meeting, so that we can make it public, maybe in the form of the articles, so our wider community members who would probably not be able to watch the full recording after we also publish it at some point as the other webinars before, so that people can be aware of this very interesting conversation. And we are planning to host something a bit later in the year. So we're still not sure about this plan, but as soon as we get it confirmed, we will definitely inform everyone. As of now, let me once again thanks our fellow organizers and participants. And we believe that this topic requires our further collaboration in the next intersessional period and the next annual meeting as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roman. And thank you, people, for nice comments in the chat. Well, we haven't finished because I'm going to wrap up for us. First, I want to thank Nicolas Fiumarelli for all the comments he made in the chat to make things more understandable for all of us. So thank you very much for that, Nico. And I think what Roman suggested to turn this into some sort of an article, I think we have a very nice basis on that. I think what today showed is that we are facing a huge challenge as the world. We see a lot of opportunities as well, but also we have a challenge to protect ourselves, our privacy, our data, our health, etc., 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 as was shown by all the different speakers. As IS3C, I started my presentation with pointing to the report that we've sent, that we published in Lillestrøm at the IGF. We hope and expect to be able to tell everybody what our next step will be. And that will probably be announced in about a week or two. And what our hope is that in February, March next year, we will be able to start 2 different working groups on the deployment of PQC on 2 topics. One will be on the DNS and one will be on routing, but there's room for other topics that are perhaps more specific for other DCs that are already here. And I think that we should be trying to collaborate on this as much as possible, because as Joao said, this is impossible to do as one stakeholder. We have to do this all together. So we'll come back to that as soon as we can tell more, but there's a lot going on because our report got a lot of traction. And I think that that is the positive thing also for the Internet Governance Forum, because it shows that our work can be very relevant. And on that note, I'd hope to see more people from industry and from governments in this webinar. And I don't know everybody personally, but I'd hoped to see more familiar faces, and they're not. And they're saying this is tremendously important, the work the IGF is doing. But where are they when the results are published? So I think we have a lot of work cut out for us to make clear, guys, we're producing this, but that is happening. And the comment somebody made on the DC's impact on I think it was Roman, but the DC's impact of the IGF is being highlighted in the past year in all sort of publications around the IGF. The dynamic coalition is now often mentioned first instead of an additional thought or not at all. And I think that we've shown and we made that possible through our work this year. And I think that that is something we can commend ourselves, but also Marcus Kumar, who's leading as a facilitator with Jutta Kroll to put us on agendas, to get us on agendas. And I think that that can be mentioned here in a very positive way as well. So thank you for that, Marcus. But for now, we need to wrap up. We're a few minutes over time, but I want to thank all the speakers that were here today, because you had such fantastic insights, and everybody showed us that we have positive sides to this quantum that's coming up, but also that we should worry about specific parts and start working together to solve them. And if we manage to do that, we will probably have time, as Clarice explained to us, that we will have some years to do this, but we have to start today. And I think we all gave out that message today. And let's see, Roman, how we can turn this into a publication. And I'm sure that everybody is willing to write a few lines for the publication so that the message comes across. So let me stop there. Thank you all very much again, also for those participating. And I hope to see you perhaps in 6 months in a second webinar that we could do on this topic. Who knows? Thank you very much. Have a very good day, and bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.